On this week's episode of Failed Presidential Candidates, we have the star of the Book of Mormon, Mitt Romney. I like this one because Mitt is a complicated character. Born March 12, 1947 in Detroit, Michigan, he was one of 4 children of American Motors CEO George Romney. His mom was a Utah native, and his dad was from one of those weird Mormon, colony things in Mexico. So to be fair about his weird cult, he was kind of fucked from the start on that one. Now, obviously, being both Mormon and the son of a Detroit automaker CEO, he started life as a spoiled rich kid, and that's never changed, and it's definitely shown from time to time. So yeah, he went to prep school, wore sweater vests, his name was fucking Mitt. He was legit the real-life version of that douchebag bad guy in any coming-of-age movie that takes place on a college campus or a ski hill or a golf course. You know, the one where the main character always steals the girl from at the end after the douche loses, some weird bet or competition. So anyway, after losing his girlfriend to Van Wilder, he went to Stanford for a year, and then went on a 30-month Mormon missionary to France in 1966, which just seems like an odd place to go try to push the Mormon agenda. I just pictured going something like, knock, knock, knock. Hi, Pierre. My name is Mitt Romney. May I interrupt your afternoon wine drinking and lovemaking session to tell you about our totally awesome religion that bans drinking and premarital sex? It's so awesome and totally believable. There was this dude named Joseph Smith in the 1820s, and he found a whole new book of the Bible in the woods in the United States. Well, I mean, they were these gold tablets, and they were given to him by an angel. Well, no, none of us have actually, seen the tablets, but he wrote a book telling us all about him, and why would he lie about that, But anyway, these tablets told him we could have as many wives as we wanted, and so he, started these colonies where he could marry, a bunch of teenage girls. No, that doesn't seem at all like an ulterior motive that would cause a man to lie about finding a book of the Bible in the woods in America and start a weird religion. No. Yeah, I understand. Thanks for your time, Pierre. Gonna go back to this bunkhouse full of sexually repressed 20-something-year-olds and spend the next year and a half in France not being allowed to smoke or drink or fuck or do anything remotely French, and spend all that time trying to convince French people that they also should not be French because some random dude in America claims he found a book in the woods. Anyway, that mission was about as successful as, you'd expect it to be. So after a year and a half of convincing approximately no French people to be Mormon, he went back to the States to finish out his education at Brigham Young University, because, Mormon. His dad, George, at this time was also serving in Richard Nixon's cabinet as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, not Indian in the cupboard. So obviously at this point now, political connections were readily available for young Romney. He also got married in this time frame, and by 1970 had his first son. After much debate on what to name him, I actually don't know, they settled on Taggart. Just a fun fact, Mitt Romney's oldest son is named Taggart Romney. Also during this time, Mitt Romney vocally strongly supported the Vietnam War while he was filling out, half a dozen draft deferments to not go to the Vietnam War. After all, fighting wars is for poor people. If they didn't want to fight wars, they should choose to not be poor. His mom also ran for Senate at this time, which I thought was weird because, Mormons and their great love and respect for women and all. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. He graduated from Brigham Young and then went to Harvard Law because, politician. After Harvard, he'd eventually go on to work for Bain & Company as a consultant before becoming the CEO of their evil private equity branch, Bain Capital. In between raping the economy with leveraged buyouts, he managed to maintain an incredibly active role in the LDS Church and have an unsuccessful bid for Senate in 1994. Then in 2002, he got the job as the CEO of the Olympics. Yep, I didn't know that was a real job either, but apparently it is, and he did a pretty good job running the troubled 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. Then, immediately after that, he went and ran for governor of Massachusetts, and this is where he gets complicated. He was personally pro-life, but swore to uphold the right to choose, anti-gay marriage, but pro-civil union benefits. He really did a lot to try to present himself as bipartisan rather than Republican. Which makes sense, because running as a Republican in Massachusetts requires a bit more policy substance than running as a Republican in, say, Alabama. Gay people are gross, abortion is murder, vote Jim Bob isn't gonna cut it on the Upper East Coast. And as governor, he wasn't awful. He got the budget under control in large part by closing tax loopholes, which wasn't very Republican of him, and also by cutting some social services and putting fees on things that affected poor people the most, which was pretty Republican. But the most interesting thing he did while he was governor was his healthcare reform for Massachusetts. When he noticed that uninsured people were costing the state a lot of money. I know, crazy concept, people who can't afford health insurance still need healthcare. He figured, oh, instead of the state footing the bill for uninsured people going to the ER and shit like that, we can make it a tax penalty for people to not have health insurance so everybody gets it. And now all the money that the state saves from people who now have health insurance, we can use to subsidize the people who can't afford health insurance, which then will save the state even more money and everybody will have health insurance. You might be saying to yourself, man, that sounds a lot like that thing Republicans hate. Obamacare. Yeah, it sounds a lot like Obamacare. You don't say. We'll come back to that. But anyway, the whole governor thing was really just Mitt Romney's attempt to springboard to the presidency. So after passing the most progressive healthcare reform since FDR's New Deal, he went full pander mode to the lowest common denominator of the Republican Party, going back on his promises to support, progressive social policy and just kind of openly hating the gays and the women folk and the poors. But then, of course, when he ran in the Republican primary for the 2008 presidential election, it got brought up that he hadn't been hating the gays and the poors and the women folk long enough or hard enough to be a real Republican. And it was also super uncool that he made some rich people pay the taxes that they were supposed to pay, so yeah, he lost that primary to John McCain, but would come back and run in the primary again for the 2012 election. So after a hard-fought primary win against a swamp amphibian and the frothy byproduct of anal sex, he won the distinct opportunity to lose a presidential election to Barack Obama. And he started seizing on this opportunity by running on a platform to repeal and replace his own healthcare plan. Yeah, remember how Romney Care sounded a lot like Obamacare? That's what it was. It was just Romney Care scaled up to the federal level. See, Obama was like, Republicans can't be mad about healthcare policy reform if it's their healthcare policy, greatly underestimating their ability to have no constitution of character or consistency in what they stand for whatsoever. But yeah, running on repealing and replacing your personal crowning achievement as governor, not the greatest look. Oh, and then he ran on wanting to get rid of, like Dodd-Frank and the banking regulations that were put in place to keep companies like Bain Capital from fucking over the entire world again, like they did in 2009. Again, in 2012, that was still very recent memory and probably not the best policy platform to run on. And then he really hammered the final nail in his coffin when he got caught on candid camera speaking to some donors, saying that half of American citizens were a bunch of freeloading assholes who were never going to vote for him anyway, so there's no point in going after their votes. The kind of shit you'd expect from the douche in the sweater vest in the ski resort movie. Obviously, he lost, and he was surprised, genuinely. He thought he was going to win. Nothing says rich out of touch elite like saying some rich out of touch elite shit and then being like, yeah, they'll still vote for me. He also, at one point, put a dog in a crate on the roof of his car, and that didn't turn out to be good press either. So yeah, he didn't run for president again after that, but he did get more complicated again. Because when the 2016 election rolled around, he spoke out against Donald Trump when it was cool to do it, but was one of the few Republicans who managed to keep track of their spine when it became uncool to do it. He tirelessly, but ultimately unsuccessfully, worked to prevent Donald Trump from gaining the nomination. Then in 2018, he was elected to the Senate for Utah, where he would go on to vote against his party to impeach Donald Trump. Twice. He also publicly and scathingly called out fellow Republicans like Ted Cruz for their role in getting us to the point of the January 6th insurrection. God, I had never thought the day would come where I'd be talking about the integrity of Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney in like the sense that they actually have some. God, that's a weird taste in my mouth. So now my opinion on if Romney had won, I don't think he would have been like Bush level awful, but I don't think he would have been good. I don't think the spine he found in the Trump era when he wasn't running for president would have extended into him being president and trying to make concessions to his party to maintain his position. I think he would have put us way back on social issues, would not have been great on climate issues, and would have been kind of shitty for the economy and the middle class. So I guess I'm saying I'm glad we got to keep the black guy. But I'm also saying that I'm glad that Mitt Romney has stayed as a voice of reason in a political party that has gotten increasingly more fucking batshit. So in the end, I'm glad he was never president, but I'm also glad that he's still around.